Hi folks, this is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. I am making this video in honor of Dr. Abraham Weizfeld, a wonderful man from Montreal, Canada. He is one of the leaders, if not the leader, of the modern Bund movement. Bund is made up of 4 letters, and I've heard it said that many Zionist Jews treat Bund like a 4-letter word, which is very sad. I attended an online, supposedly Universalist temple on YouTube today, and I was hoping that since it was Universalist, that they would have some sympathy for the Palestinians. It's called Sim Shalom. They do not, at least not as far as I could tell. My impression is that they were very, very pro-Zionist. That made me very sad. I had hoped for something better. And when I saw that that was the case, I didn't turn off the YouTube channel, but I left and went to another room and prayed for a while, meditated for a while, and then I returned to my computer, and by that time the program was over, the service was over, which suited me fine. For those of you that don't know, Abraham Weizfeld is now under charges in Canada for writing graffiti on a Zionist sign talking about liberating Palestine. That's what he wrote, liberate Palestine. Now, I could see maybe if people wanted to, for some unusual reason, to fine him, okay, fine him. Or for the owner of the sign to have a civil suit against him. But to charge him with a crime for expressing his desire to see Palestine liberated? What that showed me is that not only is the Zionist movement very powerful here in the United States, including among a lot of legislators and among the President of the United States, but it is also quite powerful in Canada. I had always thought that Canada was better than we are. I always looked up to Canada. I used to travel to Montreal on a fairly regular basis. My first trip there, I believe I was in 7th or 8th grade. I was in the band, then the junior high school band. Today it would be called the middle school band, I suppose. And Mr. Burke, who was the band conductor, a wonderful man, I assume he is now long deceased, he made arrangements with this exhibition in Montreal called Man and His World. It was what remained from Expo 67, which was a World's Fair that was held in Montreal. There was an amphitheater on the Man in His World property, and we performed there for one person. There was only one person in the audience. Was I upset about that? No. I didn't go to Montreal in my heart to play the timpani, which was my instrument at that time. I went there to have my first trip to Canada, and I loved it. I loved Montreal, and I loved the people I met in Montreal. And I'm sure if I would have met Abraham back then, who would have only been a few years older than I am now, we would have gotten along famously. regrettably, since I am an autistic, a condition which I regard as almost like a poison, because it literally has poisoned my life, especially as a child. Now, not so much. I've adapted to it. I figured out ways around it. I take loads of prescribed meds for it, and they make me somewhat human. I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek. But being an autistic is no fun. When I was re-diagnosed, when my diagnosis was corrected from schizophrenia of childhood and adolescence, which is what autism was called, beginning at least in the 1930s and continuing until 1980, schizophrenia of childhood and adolescence was the name for autism. I never knew that. I just knew that my diagnosis was schizophrenia of childhood and adolescence. I didn't find out the truth about it until maybe 20, 25 years ago. I went back to see another psychiatrist because my primary physician could not prescribe sleeping pills for me. I was having a cockroach infestation in my apartment in Kansas, and I couldn't sleep because those things would crawl on me when I was sleeping, and I didn't know where they were coming from. I later found out they were coming from the overflow drain in the bathroom sink, but I didn't know that then. When I found out, I just taped the overflow drain up, and that fixed the problem. But in a way, I think those cockroaches were a gift to me, because it was through them that I met the late Jim Hunter, my psychiatrist, an absolutely wonderful man who said, "Oh, you're autistic." I said, "My goodness." I always thought my father might be autistic, and in fact he was later, much later, diagnosed with autism himself, because I hired a psychiatrist to diagnose him, or we hired a psychiatrist to diagnose him in my family, and the psychiatrist confirmed it. But it didn't really matter anymore. I wanted to have a discussion with my father about that, but his dementia had gotten so bad by that point that he really couldn't follow what I was saying. He didn't understand what I was saying. All he kept on doing was repeating the word dementia, 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 over and over again. In the dining room, he would eat mashed potatoes with his hands. Real catastrophe for me, his son, my father's son. So I realized that my autism and my father's autism was not a gift. Many people in the autistic community, primarily but not exclusively young people, think it is a gift and see it simply as, to use the common phrase, a different way of living. Oh, it's different, all right, but not different in what I would call a good way. It's like the plague. It destroys the mind of its victim, and it destroyed my mind for a long time. It was horrendous. And so, even though I have recovered a great deal from autism, and I'm not that noticeably autistic, maybe a bit If you watch my eyes sometimes, you can see my eyes flutter. That is something I've always done as an autistic. I don't do it as much anymore, but if you know what autism is, and if you see me doing that, you might think, gee, is this guy autistic? Yeah. Can't be cured yet. Can't be cured, so I am still autistic. What that means is that even despite my best of intentions, I will sometimes revert back to my autistic self. My autistic self is a very emotional self. Now, emotions are in themselves fine, but autistic emotions are confused and jaded and mixed up. And I was really not in touch with my emotions. I couldn't really control them. I was always vacillating between being somewhat functional and being entirely dysfunctional. More often than not, I was entirely dysfunctional as a kid. That was no longer the case as an adult. But still, the autism is with me. And so, when there was a meeting of Maoist-Third Worldists, which included Abraham Weizfeld and others, Abraham and I had a kind of disagreement. I guess you might call it a fight, not physical fight. This is online, but we battled with each other verbally. And in retrospect, I thought that I behaved very, very inappropriately. And so I don't know if Abraham will ever see this video. Maybe he will sometime. I hope so. But I wanted to apologize to him from the depths of my heart. Abraham, I have nothing but respect for you. You are one of the most honorable individuals I have ever known. You fly into Israel, willingly go into Palestine, and with Palestinians throw rocks at the Israeli Defense or IDF forces. You are regarded by many Palestinians as a Palestinian yourself because of your respect and your love for I say that as a guy also from a Jewish family, our cousins, our Semitic cousins. Something which Israel and many, perhaps most, I don't know, Israelis seem to have forgotten. Today, I decided to attend, mostly out of curiosity, a Jewish Universalist temple or synagogue. They call it a synagogue. They have a cantor who sings jazz music quite well, actually. They have several rabbis. The cantor is also a rabbi, by the way. But the chief rabbi is brilliant. He gave a wonderful sermon. But despite that, in the midst of that sermon, he voiced his support for Zionism. He referred to the Jews who were killed by Hamas. He never once referred to the Palestinians who were and are being killed by the IDF. Entire neighborhoods leveled, razed to the ground by the IDF. He never once even alluded to it. How shameful. How shameful. Regrettably, Abraham can't be there. My own speculation is that he would like to be, but because of a pending case against him for writing graffiti about supporting Palestine, freeing Palestine, on a Zionist sign, he is being criminally charged. And so because of that pending case, that pending trial, he can't leave. He can't go to Israel. He can't go to Palestine. In order to get into Palestine, you have to first go to Israel, since there are no airports in the Palestinian territories. So, again, Abraham, I am truly sorry. If I could go back again, I would have behaved very differently, but I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, this forlorn, damaged, autistic man who has struggled with this condition for his entire life, with ups and downs. That experience with Abraham was a down. Generally, I'm fine, but I'm very susceptible to certain kinds of emotions. And without going into details, and it had nothing to do with Abraham, those emotions were triggered in me there, and it was, again, not Abraham's fault at all. It was entirely my fault. I take full blame for it. I don't blame anyone else. I only blame myself. That's it. Nothing else. It was something I did. It was something I will live with for the rest of my life, as long as that may be at my age of 67. But I felt it was important, especially given all the videos I've made on Palestine in the last couple of weeks, that I make this video in tribute to Abraham Weizfeld. He deserves it. He deserves it. I wish I could help you, Abraham. I would. I mean, I can travel to Canada. I don't see why you would need me, but if you did, I would be on the next plane up there. So, again, I am deeply sorry about how I treated a fellow Maoist-Third Worldist, a wonderful soul, someone whom I will always respect, irrespective of anything else. I realize my apology may not be sufficient, and I'm sorry. I can't do more than that. I wish I could. But for now, that apology will have to do. And I hope that you can look into my eyes and see that I am being very, very sincere. And at least try not to hold it too much against me the way I behaved. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.